Now, the United States of America Incorporated, a government of the stockholders, for the stockholders, by the stockholders. Not so much a democracy as a corporatocracy, if you can pronounce that word. I obviously can't. Now, it may sound a little bit far-fetched, but if your beach reading happens to be a bunch of WikiLeaks documents, they may just be the impression that you walk away with. So are corporations somehow eroding democracy? Well, that seems to be the conclusion reached by independent journalist Rania Khalek, who happens to be joining us live from Fairfax, Virginia. I just butchered your name there. Will you pronounce that for us?
It's Rania.
Rania. Thank you so much. All right, well, walk us through this. I mean, you're essentially saying that the rise of corporations in America is correlating with the erosion of democracy. What's your proof?
Well, if you look through the U.S. Embassy cables released by WikiLeaks, you'll see a trend where oftentimes in other countries, when multinational corporations' profits are threatened by whatever it may be, by that country's changing of policies or by protesters in that country, they immediately call meetings with the U.S. diplomats of that country. And the U.S. diplomats get involved and they start basically intervening. They'll intervene on behalf of a multinational corporation to force a country not to make a policy change. For example, there's cables out about Ecuador. In Ecuador a few years ago, the president of Ecuador talked about changing the drug policy for drug costs, changing the pharmaceutical policy to where they could make generics and it would be more affordable for people to buy life-saving medicines. And the U.S. corporations, the U.S. pharmaceutical companies in Ecuador, like Pfizer, all called a meeting with U.S. diplomats and talked about intervening and talking with people in the Ecuadorian government on making sure this policy didn't go through.
Okay, but I have to say, I mean, this sounds, this sounds like a pretty bad deal for the Ecuadorian people, but an American who might be reading about this will say, all right, too bad for the Ecuadorians, but at least these diplomats aren't chilling on behalf of, I don't know, Abu Dhabi or UAE corporations. At least we're helping. I mean, isn't that the job of government to promote American business and American interests?
No, because that's the problem is what we see in these U.S. cables is we see this conflation between U.S. government, U.S. interests and corporate interests, and those are not always the same. And we're seeing that diplomats are intervening in sovereign countries to sabotage the policies that could help their people. Just a corporation making more money, just because it's an American corporation, does not mean that it's beneficial towards the American people, and that is not what our diplomats should be doing. They're working for us, not for these corporate entities that are running all over the world and sabotaging democracy to benefit their profits.
Well, and let's talk about the influence of corporations and democracy here at home very briefly. I mean, you write about this kind of frequently. Explain to me how corporations making money, that sounds like a good thing. How is that actually undermining democracy here in the United States?
Well, it's interesting because corporations making more money means that they, for example, get to close down their factories in the United States and go open factories in countries where there's no regulation and they can hire people for slave labor wages. That's not benefiting the American people, but it sure is benefiting, corporate profits because they're making much more money. They don't have to pay as much for labor. So just that right there shows you that, the idea that U.S. corporation making more money is going to help Americans at home. It doesn't hold up. It really doesn't. And in America, I mean, corporations. This is really just an extension of sort of corporate rule in America. These multinational corporations they spend a lot of money on campaign contributions and buying our politicians and hey,
Mitt Romney just earned a whole bunch of cash from corporate donations. I think maybe you should come back on our show and talk about that because I mean, 2012 is almost upon us.
Right. No, I think definitely, yeah.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I'm sorry. It's been kind of a tight show today, but I really do appreciate you speaking with us. Independent journalist Rania Khalek.